welcome Mary Song. She's our featured speaker for this next hour. This is very exciting because this is actually Mary's first time speaking at a TAT event, and we're very happy to have her here. I don't want to say too much about Mary's story because she told me that she's going to be speaking about it at the beginning of this session. But Mary is a teacher at the Center for Sacred Sciences in Oregon, and I think that's where you're zooming in from. Is that right, Mary?
That's right. Eugene, Oregon. Yes. Thank you,
Thanks so
Benji.
much.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, someone asked me about this photo behind me. That's a virtual background, but we are just an hour from the Pacific Ocean here. So many of us make trips out there and see the beauty of the ocean as often as we can. So my name is Mary Song. You can call me Mary Song, Merry. And to me, this means happy tune. My mother actually gave me the name Mary. She wanted me to be happy, she said. So it's been quite a journey living up to that name, happiness or joy, Mary. But at this point in my life, I feel pretty much there with that happiness. So I wanted to talk a little bit about my spiritual path. And I think I will take maybe 20 minutes there and then turn it over to Benji and Colum to ask questions. And then I think it opens up to the larger group to ask questions. So am I on the right track, Benji? Okay, everything sounds
You
good.
got it.
Microphone. All right. So I'm very excited to be with you all. I do teach for the Center for Sacred Sciences, and we have used Zoom ever since the pandemic began in 2020. We've used Zoom, and we also have reopened our building where we have Sunday talks and meetings happening there. So I'm going to talk more about the Center for Sacred Sciences in just a few minutes. But my spiritual path, I think, is unique. It has been intimate and compelling. It has been driven by a sense that there is truth, and I can never understand it. I can never understand what it is, and so I haven't bothered to try to figure anything out. But I have let myself be drawn to it. So it starts in childhood, actually. I would say by the age of 7, I had discovered mantra practice, which is a bit strange when you think about it. I grew up in the state of Iowa, very Midwestern. My parents were not very religious, but we lived next to a Methodist church. So my mother said, we'll go to the Sunday school over there. So I learned about Jesus and Bible stories and so on. But at night, that period of time between getting into bed and actually going to sleep, I found myself talking to God. And at that point, I was thinking of God as this man in the sky who could see all and know all. I don't think of it that way now. But I began to talk to God. And what did I say? I said, "Thank you, God. Thank you, God, for everything." Not once, but again, thank you, God. Thank you, God, for everything. So I realized later in life, I was chanting. I had a mantra going. Thank you, God. Thank you, God, for everything. How did this come to me? I do not understand it. Maybe you might have some ideas. How did this come to me to do that? But more than that, I noticed the breath. So I'm lying there in my bed, say 7 years old, and I noticed the inhale and the exhale, and that I could continue this thank you, God, for everything in synchronicity with the breath. So I would lie there until I fell asleep, thanking God and watching the breath of the body. Then I began to think of a light that could travel the whole length of the body, from head to toe. I would see it going, and I would feel the breath moving in and out of the body as I continued to repeat, thank you, God for everything. To me, this meant the good stuff and the bad stuff and whatever stuff it was. Thank you for all of it. So in childhood, I had a very strong presence of being. I had a sense of awareness of the entire body, the breath body. No one taught me this. So I sometimes wonder, would this be the natural outcome if we were allowed just to explore and discover without a lot of thought getting in the way? Now, I will say I had an older brother. He was only 4 years older, so 11 years old or 12 years old. And he taught me something very important. How he knew to do this, I do not know. But he said, question everything. Question everything. Who are you? Why are you here? What is this? Self-inquiry, an inquiry practice. Question everything. And I'd say to him, Richard, don't you just want to have fun? And he said, tell me what fun is, and I'll tell you if I want to have any of it. So that was an amazing way to start in life this way. Now I want to leap ahead to age 30. By the way, my brother and I decided, whatever this is, the human brain is not designed to figure it out. So it wasn't something I tried to figure out or he tried to figure out. We just felt it. We felt that presence. So to make the story short, I'm going to leap ahead to age 30. And this especially pertains to your theme for today, pretty lies and ugly truths, fighting just a rationalization on the spiritual path. Because by the age of 30, I had earned a degree in broadcasting and filmmaking and had landed a pretty nice job with the same university where I got my degree as a public radio producer. So working with microphones like on Zoom here became very natural for me. And I thought, aha, now I am someone. I am someone special. Here comes the pretty lie. I'm someone special. Whenever you notice that happening, my friends, notice yourself feeling special, that is the cue to stop and notice the story that you're telling yourself. So I spoke to an audience online. I interviewed a lot of people. It was a good job, but there was something missing, and I wasn't really happy. Still grasping for happiness, grasping and pushing away that which I thought would make me unhappy. But something happened. I became very ill. In fact, it was a life-threatening sepsis in the body. I was quite sick, and it meant that I had to go to the hospital and have surgery. And I was afraid. I was afraid to have the surgery. And I recall very distinctly going into the surgery room, they're wheeling you in on a gurney, and feeling just blood cold fear, like end of life fear going in there. And when I came out of surgery, I noticed that my consciousness, I couldn't move at all. I couldn't open my eyes or any of that, but my consciousness was boundless, was wide open. And I knew that I could never go back to the type of life I had been living. Something had shifted. And I went back to the radio station. I soon put in my notice. I had to go on. I had to move on and answer the calling, this undeniable call to what I called the truth. I never called it ugly truth. But this beautiful calling was undeniable. So there I was in the Midwest. One thing I had working at the radio station was the radio program that was aired on many public radio stations, NPR affiliate stations, and that was New Dimensions Radio. And they interviewed all the teachers and people on the leading edge of spirituality and psychology. And so every week I would be listening to that radio program and absorbing that and knowing out there in the world, there are many, many people answering that call and teaching. And I could find them if I go. So at the same time, grasping for happiness, I applied to the MFA program in creative writing at the University of Oregon. And they took me. They accepted me. Wow, I'm somebody special, right? Well, I got accepted into the creative writing program. So I went there and I realized when I got there, I'm not that special. Nobody knows me, on the air, on the radio, people knew who I was and all this. But out here, nobody knows who I am and they don't really care. And the writing program, I got through it. I got my degree, but it did not bring me happiness. It did not bring me happiness. One place that I found out here in Oregon that seemed to be just exuding a lot of happiness was Brighton Bush Hot Springs, a healing retreat and conference center up in the Cascade Mountains in the old growth forest where the huge, huge trees live and have been living for so many years. So I went up there with some friends and I thought, oh my gosh, this place is incredible. I want to be here. They had teachers like Ram Dass coming. And, people were just so alive there. So I volunteered. The first summer I was there, I volunteered. Please just let me serve. Let me be here. And, I had a light burning inside me. Ever since that surgery, when I came out of that, a light was burning inside me. It was a bright light and it attracted people. And there was a problem with that because people were confused about what that light was. I was confused about what that light was, but I knew that I should be very careful not to corrupt it, not to mix it up with having intimate relationships and this and that when people were drawn to it. So there I am at Brighton Bush Hot Springs. You might look them up and see what they're like. They're surviving a terrible forest fire of a few years ago that burned much of the forest, I'm sad to say. But at that time, there was not a forest fire, maybe an inner forest fire burning away. And I had a life-altering event there. I'm going to keep it short, but one day I was walking across the Brighton Bush Bridge and I stopped. I was alone. I stopped and I looked. It was a footbridge. Looked up to the Devil's Ridge, it was called. And as I stood there looking up, my sense of self fell away. I didn't ask it to fall away. I didn't do anything to make it fall away. It fell away. And the mind stopped. This was not a problem. There was no fear. And when I continued across the bridge, I noticed that joy was filling my being. Feeling of joy. So we think about emptiness. Sometimes that word emptiness it kind of scares us. You mean empty, like an empty box or something? This emptiness was a joyful, brilliant feeling. And when I got across that bridge, that light was shining so brightly through me. The mind the mind was, it was just like at ease. The mind was at ease. And people came to me, guests who were there and the staff, people came to me and wondering, what is it? What do you have? What do you have here? And again, I noticed this problem with people being attracted and my not being able to sort out um, attraction to me as a person in this body. See what I'm saying? Does that make sense? Give me a thumbs up if you're following me. Okay, good. Yeah. So, I mean, was this sexual energy? Is she flirting with me? Men and women would come and look in my eyes, and I might cry, they might cry, and I realized, I don't know what to say about what has happened, and I don't know how to be with people yet. So I backed away. I backed away. I came to realize that what I most needed was a teacher. I needed teachings. I needed to know how to handle this energy flowing through me. It was unlike anything I had ever experienced. And, of course, I had dabbled in, books and teachers and some things, but more or less surface compared to what I did end up with. So I had the great pleasure. Let me see if I can share screen for a moment. Okay. I had the great pleasure. Benji, am I sharing screen? Can you see this image?
Yeah,
Okay,
it's
good.
working great.
Good. This is Ruth Dennison. I call her Master Vipassana teacher. She has now passed away. She passed away in 2015. I had the great good fortune of being with her for probably at least, 15 years. She came to Brighton Bush Hot Springs and would lead 9-day or 10-day Vipassana retreats. And as you can see, I am on my knees and my nose is red from crying. This is the end of a retreat with her, and she's giving me a blessing. She taught me all about the Dharma. And it was love at first sight. Love at first sight for this teacher. Divine love. I wanted nothing more than to support the Dharma. She was giving me the Buddha's teachings. I was wide open to them. I never tried to memorize anything. Going back to childhood where I never tried to figure it out, I never tried to memorize all of these long lists in Buddhism. And she said, you do not have to be a Buddhist to practice Buddhism. She was a lay teacher for lay students, by the way. And she was a contemporary of Goenkaji. Many of you have probably heard of Goenkaji. Both of them came from the lineage of Ubakin in Burma, Myanmar. But Ruth was a maverick. She had her own way. And she drew especially a lot of women, men too, but a lot of women who wanted that strong female teacher. Wisdom of the female teacher definitely worked for me. And I so wanted to support her that I began photographing her and then videotaping her. Not really videotaping her, but capturing her on video and then creating documentaries about her. She was, oh, my great good fortune. My great good fortune. I always keep this picture of the two of us here at the end of a retreat. I think I'm 42 here. And she's probably, 70 or so in this picture. Her retreat center, by the way, is called Dama Dana, located in near Joshua Tree, California. But she would travel also to IMS, Insight Meditation Society in Massachusetts, and I would follow her and go to all these different places. But how did I make ends meet? What am I going to do for a job? Well, I had this MFA, which allows you to teach on the college level. So I was able to get a part-time position and teach college level writing courses. For a long time, I did that because that's how I paid for everything. And I was able to use the classroom as a place to practice meditation and compassion, to cultivate awareness while I was with people, working with them, and giving compassionate attention to my students. So that was a great place for me to investigate and cultivate and to share and learn more about working with people. You know, in an academic setting, you're very definite rules about, you know, touching people or getting too close or being too intimate. And this was good because I could start working with my energy and be with people and see the response without it getting mixed up. Now, living in Eugene, Oregon, I discovered the Center for Sacred Sciences, which is a center based on the gnosis of Joel Morwood. Okay. Some of you may have looked up Joel Morwood and the Center for Sacred Sciences. Let me just hold up one book for you, The Way of Selflessness by Joel Morwood. I highly recommend this book. I think it's a life's work of Joel's. And, you know, the way of selflessness is what we practiced. Another great good fortune. I was able to have Ruth Dennison and Joel Morwood both as primary teachers. Let me see if I have a screen share for you. You have this. This is a recent portrait I did of Joel. But when I met him, I met him 30 years ago this fall. I was still in my 30s and Joel was in his 50s. So I'm in my 60s and Joel's in his 80s now. It's a long relationship. And I can only say that, you know, when this happens to a spiritual seeker or a spiritual being, to be in the presence of great teachers, you just thank you, God, for everything. I kind of shifted that thank you, God, to thank you, Ma, the mother creator. But anyway, thank you for everything, all the hardships and everything I had to work through, the illness and all this to get to this point. So with Joel, I wanted to point out to you, I'm not sure if I have a screen share, but these are our 10 selfless precepts. Let me see if I do have a screen share on that. I do, yes, good. Okay. I can't see you, but I think you can see this list. Responsibility, self-discipline, harmlessness, stewardship, honesty, integrity, honor, sexual restraint, charity, and remembrance. So these precepts, when I first started in 1993, I remember working these precepts so hard. I mean, going over and over them, working them, each one individually in your life, to take responsibility for your life, not to blame others for your own unhappiness, nor make excuses for your own mistake. That's a life-changing precept when you take that. You can't blame anyone for your own unhappiness. You have misgivings, you feel bad. Who's responsible for that? Somehow I'm responsible. You see? So we would work these and share, and Joel kept us really focused and moving with these. Now, I wanted to bring up number 5, honesty, because I think it pertains to your theme, pretty lies and ugly truths. Honesty, not to deceive myself or others by word or deed. Now, not to deceive myself or others by word or deed. Now, it seems to me that we pretty much know when we have told a lie to someone, out and out lie. We notice it. And maybe we justify that. I have reasons why. Or maybe, we did it without thinking. We're aware of that. But when it comes to deceiving ourselves, we may not be so aware. It might, slip by us. Oh, I didn't realize I was fooling myself. So what are some ways in which we deceive ourselves? Well, for one thing, we think we're separate individuals, and we believe that story. But I asked Joel just the other day, I said, Joel, what are some ways in which we deceive ourselves? And I wanted to give you a quote from Joel. He says, enlightenment is the same for everybody, but our delusion is very unique. We come up with all kinds of ways of being deluded. So how people deceive themselves really depends on the person. He says, one of the ways we deceive ourselves is where we think we are on the spiritual path. We have an insight or a wonderful spiritual experience, and then we believe we have gotten someplace on the spiritual path. I'm almost there. But he says, no matter where you think you are on the spiritual path, you're not. If you think you have gotten somewhere, you are actually working yourself deeper into delusion. From a spiritual point of view, we are never getting anywhere. We are already there. We are here. Here. He says, and then we can also deceive ourselves in the opposite direction. We can feel that we're not getting anywhere. I'm a lousy meditator. I will never get anywhere. It's the same thing, really, just different ends of it. The key, he says, is to notice the story of I. So Joel, I'm not sure if you've heard of this story of I, but it's that constant narrative going through our mind, informing us of who we think we are. That story of I. He says the key is to notice the story of I, whether you are the good guy or the bad guy, the great meditator or the lousy meditator. He says anytime you think you're special, either for better or worse, that's the time to stop and notice and let go of the story. Let go of the story. Drop the story. Drop the story. Now, I only have a few minutes left, it looks like. I want to say that Joel, like I say, I've had a 30-year relationship with him now. Joel asked me to teach in his lineage in 2014. Now, that was a big deal for me. That was, and when you're asked to teach in the lineage of someone that you have so much respect for and have been with for so long, and they ask you to teach, I was speechless. But here's the thing, I could not say yes. I could not say yes because I knew there were still some things in my psyche that were hiding out. And until I liberated that stuff, I could not step forward as a spiritual teacher. It took me 6 years. It took me 6 years to clear that. And then I stepped forward and I said yes. Now, Joel allowed me to do what I do best, to create writing workshops. I had a lot of experience, 30 years experience teaching college level writing courses. He let me combine my creative writing practice with awakening practice. And so I designed what I call the Go as Nothing writing workshops that I teach at the center. These workshops are designed not to dwell on old stories, which we often like to do, dwell on our old stories, but rather to illuminate the fictional nature of the stories we're telling ourselves. Now, that's not to say things didn't happen to you in the past, but that continual story, that narrative, that story of I, it's making new stories up. It's connecting dots and telling them to you. And we believe them. We believe them until we stop believing them. When we stop believing them, we have liberation. We liberate the story and we liberate this. And we are here. We haven't gone anywhere. So I wanted to work that in because I have recently produced a 4-part video series that demonstrates the Go as Nothing writing workshops. And I believe you all have a link in your program to these workshops. It's free of charge. It's just recently released. And you can click on that link and go to a registration page. I'd like to know, where you are. This helps me keep track of how many people are interested. And check it out. Check it out. Okay, Benji, I think I've gone over time. So I'm going to turn it over to you and Colum.
Yeah, thanks, Mary. Really
You're
appreciate
welcome.
you sharing your story, and it was, it's great to hear from you. I guess maybe before we open it up to the audience here, I wanted to ask you one question about your story, and then maybe a practical question. So you mentioned that moment on the bridge. I don't exactly remember how you described it, but you said that your sense of being someone, or your sense of self, it sort of evaporated. And was that, well, first of all, is that a fair way to describe it?
Yes, it's very hard to describe something like that. But, if you're
Mhm.
walking around with that narrative running through your mind, telling you things all day long, telling you you're this and you're that, when that stops, it's very noticeable. I mean, that is our sense of self in terms of the story of I. Okay. It's informing you constantly, all these experiences you've had and this and that. So when that falls away, it's very noticeable.
Hmm. And was that conclusive? Like, was that a permanent thing for you?
Yeah, the way I describe it is that a light switch, it's a metaphor, but a light switch was turned on in that moment so that a light was shining in the mind. And so it continues now. Right now, the switch is on, it never switches off, which isn't a problem. I can sleep just fine with that light on. But what happens is I can't hide. I can't, there's nothing I can hide in the mind. You see what I'm saying? It's lit up like stage lights are lit up, spotlights in the mind. And so if I have an angry thought, there it is, I see it. I have a jealous thought, there it is, I see it. And in that seeing, in that recognition, there lies liberation. When we can't see those things, then we fuel them up. Yeah, I have reason to be mad about that. See? And it goes on and on. But the recognition, I see it, it's gone. It doesn't stick.
Thanks. Yeah, and I guess I had a question on the practical side. I just was kind of struck because, at the TAT Foundation here, there's a kind of a tradition, and it comes from Richard Rose, who was the founder. It's very hard nosed, and you really you're breaking down the false identities and you're really grinding away at it. And I was kind of struck by your story. You know, you woke up from surgery and all of a sudden something had changed, and then you were just crossing the bridge and all of a sudden the self went away. So I guess, and you also mentioned later on in your talk, you said, you know, you have to stop believing the separate self. So you seem like you had an incredible gift of, it was sort of just taken from you. What can you share for those of us who that hasn't happened for? What can we do practically to stop
Yes.
believing the separate self?
This is a state of grace. I can't take credit for having made something happen on that bridge. And it's not as though I was engaged in intense practices. The intense practice like Vipassana came later. And through working in those practices, I began to learn how to really focus my energy, embody that, integrate it. But yes, it was a state of grace. If you've ever experienced grace, you will know what I mean. I couldn't like take you, Benji, and take you to that bridge and put you there, and say, now just wait, it's going to happen. It doesn't work that way. Or if you go for a graduate degree, you've got to jump through this hoop, that hoop, that hoop, that hoop. You got to work with these people. You got to make your thesis and all this and finish. And then you get the degree. It's not that way on the spiritual path. That's what Joel is saying here. You never really go anywhere. You're here. So why do we have the spiritual practices then? If you can have it, you can have this without. It's because it cultivates the mind that can relax, relax, relax. So I'm in favor of spiritual practices, working precepts, for example, investigation, meditation. I love meditate because I've always loved silence. As you can see, in childhood, I was practicing naturally. Nobody told me to do it. It wasn't a problem. I wasn't afraid or anything. I just wanted to talk to the divine and thank the divine. And it became part of the body, breathing it and, the light going around. Where did that come from? I'm going to call it grace.
I ask Mary, and thank you very
Yes.
much.
Yes.
Thanks for sharing your story. Um, just in relation to that, when you find yourself sort of automatically just saying thank you, God, and when you're at a young age, um, looking back on your journey, would you describe your journey as a bhakti devotional journey path?
Yeah. It's very hard for me to put labels on it. Am I Janani? Am I Bhakti? Seems like both or
Mm-hmm.
none. Seems like both together. And so when I've been asked that in the past, I've always thought, I don't know. I've been devoted to the divine. I've also had self-inquiry
Mm-hmm.
and never tried to figure it out or label it for myself.
Mm-hmm.
Definite devotion to my teacher. Love my teachers because they give their life,
Mm-hmm.
they give their life to this
Absolutely.
free of charge.
Yeah.
Free of charge. Thank you.
Thank you.
Did that answer your question?
It did indeed. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
So, Mary, I have a lot of questions for you, but I want to open it up to the
Yeah.
group now. Yeah, thanks. Great. We already have a few people raising their hands. So, David, do you want to ask your question? Please go ahead.
Yeah, Mary, I love your talk.
Oh, thank you.
Can you please hold up those 10 precepts again?
Let me see if I could do screen share for you.
Thank you.
Yes. So responsibility, as I said, that changes your life right there. You can't go out with your friends and complain about somebody else and how the bad things they do, blaming them for what makes you unhappy. You have to look at that yourself. Self-discipline, not to waste time in frivolous pursuits. These are so precious. And Joel is responsible for this. Harmlessness. He says it's important to do these in order. Harmlessness, not to injure or kill any being heedlessly or needlessly. Stewardship, honesty, integrity, honor, sexual restraint. So, some people go, oh, no, not that. But it doesn't mean you can't have sex. It means that you honor that. You don't do it selfishly. You give it to God or the divine. Charity. Charity is important for me because I came to realize this says not to be possessive of people or things, but to give unsparingly of my assets, both material and spiritual, for the alleviation of suffering. So somewhere along the line, I realized you are hoarding your spiritual assets. You have to open up and give this to people. And of course, remembrance, to remember these precepts, to keep remembering the path and the divine. Anybody else? Yeah, Bill, go ahead.
You mentioned that an undeniable calling.
Yes.
Do you feel that everybody has a calling, but we don't recognize it? And if so, how can we develop, or how do we pursue that if we don't really recognize it?
Well, I recognize all of you here today. You wouldn't be here. There's lots of other things you could be doing. You wouldn't be here if you didn't have some sense of that calling. This is hard. Most people, they're not doing this. They're doing other things in life. So, yes, for me, it was an undeniable calling. It was almost like being in love. When you're in love with someone, you can't stop thinking about them. They're on the tip of your tongue all the time. You want to be with them. You're reaching. I felt that kind of longing and yearning for the divine, which was already here. Obviously, it was already here. If you feel you don't have the calling, do you feel that yourself, Bill? Do you feel that you don't have that calling, or where does the question come from?
It's an ongoing, lingering yearning.
Yearning. I love those words because I understand them. To truly yearn, to truly long. Yeah, you've got it. You've got it. You feel that in your heart. I mean, many people, they go get a degree or get married or have children or buy a new car, the car you always wanted. And you feel like something's missing. I lived all these decades and then got all these things, lost things, got a divorce or whatever. And there was something always missing, something and I can't put my finger on what that is that I wanted. See what I'm saying? What's underneath all that? Grasping. We're grasping for happiness and pushing away that which we think will make us unhappy. We want happiness. Happiness, it comes with it. Happiness brings that longing. I want to be happy. So I'll go to school and I'm going to date this person and I'm looking for happiness. And maybe for a little minute, I think I'm happy now. And then it goes away. And now I'm not happy. So now what do? I'm longing for happiness. The recognition that you're longing for freedom from that dang story going on and on. Yeah, Dean, go ahead.
So, I have taught creative writing to kids, and I've written scripts and plays and things like that. So, my question to you is, what is the value of creative writing in spiritual practice? Are
Yeah,
they separate from each other, or can it be a good practice spiritually?
I'm so glad you brought that up. I tell you what, my degree's in fiction, and I love fiction. I love fiction. Don't y'all love it? You love a good novel. You love a good movie. You love a good story of I. Let me tell you what happened to me. I'll tell you my story. They're stories. So the thing about creative writing, especially fiction, and spiritual practice, is to realize that this story of I that most of us believe in is fiction too. Now, that's not a problem. I'm not saying get rid of it, get rid of fiction. I'm saying let's enjoy it. Let's celebrate it. In fact, I celebrate my story. There it is rumbling around down there. Oh, and my brother did that, and then this and that rumbling. And I don't have to like engage or dwell or believe that makes me bad or that makes me none of that. Oh, isn't it incredible? Life gives us this ability to recognize the fiction that's coming through. So I use fiction when I teach these spiritual writing workshops and creative nonfiction and some poetry to help people see that their minds are at work creating the story of who they think they are. Isn't that amazing? It's fiction. Don't be mad at it. Don't, I don't say get rid of the ego. Say, there it is. There's the ego. Isn't it amazing? It's a creation. I love creations. I love fiction. But somewhere we forgot that we have great imaginations. Let's write a novel together and make a whole lot of money with it. We could do that and people will love it. They eat it up. But what about our suffering? We're suffering because of the story, this fictional nature of the story of I am suffering on because of, I can't get along and, or whatever it is. I'm no good. Dean, does that answer your question?
Yes, and that's always been my belief too. When you drop acid in college and then suddenly you realize everything's fiction and you're a fiction and all that kind of stuff. So yes, that's one of my favorite things that I always keep close to my heart, the
Yeah.
nature of we are fiction and so much of what we tell ourselves is fiction. And once again, trying to when you get those stories, getting them out of you and getting them on paper, I think is a good exercise to kind of clear your mind.
Yes, it is. And I'm in favor of that. However, in the workshops that I developed, I always make a point to say these are not therapy groups. So I'm not here to dig up, your biggest hurt and dwell on that with you. That's not what we're here for. We're here to illuminate this story and see how it's a product of imagination. Now, one way to do that is we get into writing fiction and lots of different things. I pulled this out in the old days. I teach on Zoom right now, but when I taught in person, I would always present my students with what I call a roll up. And this is a week's worth of writing prompts I would give them. They must write 10 minutes every day. And every day they would open another rung of their list and they would jump off that prompt. I shouldn't have. It says, I shouldn't have. Oh, people can write lots about that, huh? But what if I changed it to she or he or they shouldn't have? So I like to mix up the verbs and the point of view as we go. And each day they go, another one, another one, another one, another one. And then we'd get together each week for a 2-hour session, and people would choose one and they would read. So reading it, sharing it with others is part of that process. So by the way, I have 2 workshops coming up in October. I have a couple seats left. These workshops are free of charge. They're offered to the Center for Sacred Sciences, but I can sometimes invite people from outside of that. Hi, Rex.
Hi, I'm not really familiar with the word Dharma. How do you get that? And can you read about it, or does it have to be
Oh,
oral
yes.
transmission?
Dharma. Oh gosh, how do you explain what Dharma is? Ruth would call it the way of understanding and love. Dharma. What is your Dharma? But, there are different ways to describe what Dharma is. But the Dharma of Buddhism is what she presented to me and modeled for me, the Dharma. And realizing that I have Dharma and I can support Dharma in the world, the way of understanding and love is the way Ruth would describe it. Yeah. Yeah,
Thank you.
Look up Dharma. It's a beautiful word in itself. Makes a great name. Take it as a
What
name.
would its translation be in English?
Dharma?
Yeah. Teaching?
Huh? Teaching?
Teaching?
Could somebody out there quickly look it up? Look up the word Dharma and see what a dictionary definition would be.
Isn't it
Right
simply
way
the
of
word
living.
way? The way?
The way?
They're called.
Yeah.
Okay.
The right way of
This
living.
says no single word translation exists for Dharma in European languages.
Yeah, that's
Order and
yeah.
custom or virtue, religious duty.
The way
I
of Tao. Go ahead.
remember the saying from somewhere, a quote, the dharma of the fire is to burn.
Yes. Way. Yeah. Beautiful. Beautiful. It's simple and yet can be complex. Let's see, someone did write in Indian religion, the eternal and inherent nature of reality. Yeah.
Yes, that's what I understood. The inner nature of all things,
Beautiful.
which is both empty and full.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Rex.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you.
And Bill.
While we're doing definitions, how do you describe grace? What is your teaching about grace?
I had a friend named Grace. She passed away, and I was so sad to lose her, this grace from my life. Grace is another one of those words. I mean, it pops up in different religions, the Christian idea of grace and so on. To me, when I say grace happened on that bridge, I mean that it happened beyond me. It was like a divine orchestration. It was grace. Who else has a different definition of grace? Anybody?
God's unmerited favor.
Say again.
God's unmerited favor. I guess
Yeah.
that'd be a summary.
Yeah. Yeah. So various branches of Christianity would have different ways of looking at it. But yeah, how can the eternal and inherent nature of reality ever be described or known? Yeah, right. Grace. Some of these things, when you experience it, you think, oh yeah, I remember someone said something about grace. This feels like maybe that's what that is, It's not something that I can make happen. I wish I had some grace right now. I'll go back to the bridge and stand there. It won't work. I can't make it happen. I think maybe that's the big point of it all, is that this little I, the story of I can't make nothing happen. It comes to you.
You believe there's help? Do we get
Help.
help? Are there helpers, guardian angels?
You know, there have been times in my life when I have accepted the belief in that there's angels and there's aliens. But right now, I don't feel any need to believe, to believe in this and that. I'm just present. So, if an angel came and stood before me, I wouldn't be surprised, really. I'd say hello. Thank you for being here. Angels and demons. And, I love to investigate and look at what other people think and so on. There might be an angel right here on my shoulder. I feel Ruth Dennison, she's like always with me kind of thing.
Mary, I was thinking about your story and kind of based on what Colum asked about how you saw your path, if it was kind of more devotional. And I guess something I was wondering is like, devotion is like you're kind of dissolving into someone or something else. So when you were along that way, how did you use like, how did you discern what, if you were devoting to the right thing or not? Like what kind of, how did you keep yourself honest, or how did you keep the other thing or person honest? I don't know if it's kind of a clumsy way of
I understand what you're saying, because we have to be careful, because there's all kinds of news about cults and people being taken advantage of. And how do you know when you have this response to a teacher or a path or something? Are you being honest with yourself really about this? Are they being honest with you? And that's a tricky question. Coming forward as a spiritual teacher, I've had to ask myself, when someone comes to me and says, I want you to be my teacher, where are they coming from? So what I can say about Ruth Dennison, my immediate response to her presence was I went down on my knees. Like that, I felt my whole being surrender. Now, she could have taken advantage of me. That's true. Did I watch carefully? I think I did. I think I watched carefully. Was I being taken advantage of? What I observed was someone giving me something. It's free of charge too. I mean, that's something to think about. And with Joel, when you're with somebody for 30 years, you can tell whether they're consistent in what they're teaching. Joel has never wavered in what he teaches. It's always the same. But I think you're right, Benji. When you have an attraction to anything, you have to investigate yourself. Am I doing this because I want that person to like me? I did notice with Ruth Dennison that sometimes I felt like maybe I was teacher's pet and people didn't like, that. They would be jealous. And so I'd have to investigate myself. So a devotion to investigation, self-inquiry, looking at yourself and discerning. Did I answer your question, Benji? In a roundabout way?
Thank you. Thanks. Yeah.
Yeah.
I see Bob has a question. I think this will have to be the last one, just so we can stick to the schedule. Sorry, David.
So
Okay.
going back to the topic on grace, it occurred to me the word karma, and I'm wondering if did Ruth ever speak about karma?
Yeah,
And
she had a dog named Karma even. She rescued dogs in the desert because people would come and drop dogs off, and she had all, dogs, and she loved animals, and she would talk about karma. And but she didn't impress it upon us like you must believe in karma. and I have studied some Tibetan Buddhism and so on, where karma is a strong belief. I feel sometimes karma is a balancing thing that happens. And you can think of it in a lifetime. I mean, you might say, well, I have other lives. I have karma, from that life. I don't actually bother. I'm sorry if you do believe.
But oh no, it's not a belief.
Yeah.
So were those 6 years that you spent in that period that you mentioned? Was that you working through the karma that
My-
had got created from your life up to that point?
I think that's an excellent question. Yes. Karma that I created myself earlier in life. And to be just swift with this, parts of myself hiding. So I learned early in life to hide parts of myself. And I think we all do. If we don't feel like people want to know what we're all about, we hide. So I think that's true, that later in life, I realized I've got things still hiding. That's my karma now. And I have the opportunity to release that. And that's what I did.
Yeah, I just a quick comment for myself. I felt like I had to work, I was married, I started a family, and then my realization happened soon after that. And I was asked, like, well, why don't you suddenly change your life around? I said, no, I don't see any reason to change anything. Quite the contrary. I've already made pretty long-term commitments, and I'm going to see them through.
Yes, good commitment, and to see them through. Right, beautiful. Thank you, everyone. So I think Benji, we're to that point. Yes.
Thanks, Mary. Yeah, we're there. Thank you very much.
Colin.
I'm not sure
Yes.
if Benji is there.
Okay. Yes.
Thank you very much.
Let me just say, I'm happy to hear from any of you. You can reach me at Merry Song. So MERRY, like Merry Christmas, Song, SONG, Merry Song at Center for Sacred Sciences.org, which is a mouthful. But look us up. And if you have a question or comment, get in touch with me.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Mary. Thank you so much for coming
It's
along
a
today.
pleasure.
Wonderful.
Just a pleasure to talk.
Yeah, thanks so much, Mary. My internet cut out for a second there, so I missed the end, but we really appreciate you taking the time to speak to us for the first time. Hopefully you can come back another time. Maybe you can visit TAT in North Carolina at our home there.
Yeah, I would love to know more about what you're doing there. Yes. Thank you, everyone. Peace to you all. That's what Joel always says. Peace to you all.
Thank you,
Back
Mary.
to you.